Hello and welcome to the big picture. The Indo-Pakistan relations that has gone through many ups and downs over the decades and which has been more or less in the cold storage over the last 6 months is now seeing another thaw in the ties. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi talking to his Pakistani counterpart Nawaz Sharif last week and his decision to send Foreign Secretary Jaishankar to Pakistan next month is being seen as a sign of renewal of relations. After the Indian government cancelled the meeting of the foreign secretaries in August last year, the relations had frozen virtually. Meanwhile, the kind of election results which has been thrown up in Jammu and Kashmir, which is yet to see a government after nearly 2 months, is also being seen as a catalyst. We will discuss today what the offer of India to renew talks with Pakistan means and if it has any relations to the situation in Jammu and Kashmir, and also how much this decision of India will be successful. To discuss this, I have with me Vivek, Katju, former ambassador, GVL Narasimha, national spokesperson of the BJP, Naeem, Akhtar, spokesperson of the PDP, will be on the phone line from Jammu, Pushp, Saraf, senior journalist, and on the phone line from Islamabad is veteran journalist Mohammed Ziauddin. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Ziauddin, I would like to come to you first. This offer of India to renew the talks, the offer of sending the foreign secretary to Pakistan next month, how is it being seen in Pakistan?
Well, it has been welcomed wholesomely. I mean, people have liked it. I mean, people were actually, after the cancellation of the August foreign secretary talks, and then the crisis on the LOC, had actually created a kind of a mindset in this country that perhaps Mr. Modi is allowed to put up a stone wall against Pakistan. Now that he has agreed to send his foreign secretary next month, it has been welcomed. Yeah.
Okay. So is this the right time to renew the talks? According, as far as you are concerned, do you think so? Are the conditions right for the renewal of talks in Pakistan?
Well, any time is the right time if people with good intentions would like to start talking. So I think this is the most ideal time for India to start talking. Yeah, why not?
Okay, sir, please stay on. I'll come back to you, Mr. Katju. Ideal time to renew the talks?
I'd like to step back a little.
Yes.
In August, Mr. Modi's government had made it clear that if Pakistan talks to separatists prior to an official dialogue between India and Pakistan, India will not accept that. Even though the successive Indian governments over the last 2 decades had followed that policy.
Followed that policy of
allowing Pakistan to talk to our separatists.
Right.
Now, I, for one, applauded that decision because I think no country should allow separatists to be in touch with the other state because that gives it a color that separatists are somehow part of the dialogue. And that is what Pakistan has always said, that the problem in Jammu and Kashmir is India, Pakistan and the people of Jammu and Kashmir. We have never accepted it. Mr. Modi had also made it clear in May last year, which I think was correct, that he wanted a dialogue. And then the third component of his Pakistan policy was that if Pakistan resorts to violence, either cross-border terrorism or on the LC and the IB, India will respond suitably. Now, the question in my mind is, if there have been assurances given by the Pakistanis that there will be no contact prior with Indian separatists, the so-called Hurriyat, prior to the dialogue. If that is so, then I welcome this decision. But if that is not so, then I am afraid that I see very little difference between Mr. Modi's Pakistan policy and the policy of the former government, of the UPA government.
What you're saying is that if there is any such assurance, but we have not seen on record from any.
Well, we have the BJP spokesman here. He perhaps
we will get it clarified from him. But before that, let me get Mr. Ziauddin back. Mr. Ziauddin, would Pakistan government agree to such condition that there can't be any talks with the Indian separatists, the Hurriyat leaders, before the talks between the 2 foreign secretaries takes place next month?
Well, Mr. Modi himself has made it possible for Pakistan to avoid that meeting by saying that the Foreign Secretary would be visiting the SAARC countries. So that way, if it is a SAARC assignment, the Hurriyat does not come in.
No,
So that way, I'm not very sure that Pakistan would be compelled to keep its tradition of meeting the Hurriyat prior to talks with India.
No.
Yes.
This meeting is not only in the SAARC context. After all, when the Foreign Secretary is going there,
It will be a bilateral thing.
No, he will also, I imagine, undertake what Mr. Modi and Mr. Nawaz Sharif had instructed the two foreign secretaries in May, which was to explore possibilities of the renewal of the dialogue
Absolutely.
process.
This is just an exploration of the renewal of the process. Mr. Narasimha Rao, how would you react to what Mr. Katju says? That, what is the difference? My question is, what is the difference between the situation in August when the foreign secretary level talks were abruptly cancelled and now? What changes have taken place for the government to have made this offer to Pakistan?
Girish, from the beginning, I think the policy of this government has been to promote ties with all our neighbors, and this is what Prime Minister had done even at the time of his swearing in. A clear message was sent across to all the neighbors and the SAARC countries. The Prime Minister visited Bhutan, Nepal, and even at the SAARC meeting, he highlighted the need for the SAARC countries to be involved in greater engagement. And after the flashpoint last August, when the Indian government made our position very clear vis-a-vis talks with separatists by Pakistan ambassador in India, Pakistan High Commissioner was concerned. I think the India's position on this is very well stated. And to my mind, there is no need for a reiteration of this stand or reiteration of this policy. Whether there is a formal discussion on this, whether there are assurances, I am not privy to any such information. As a party spokesperson, I do not have any greater information than what most of you possibly have. But I think the India's position is quite stated, quite categorically has been stated upfront last August. So I think in the interest of taking this dialogue forward, in the interest of ensuring a successful visit by a new foreign secretary, I think the Pakistan would not want to create any situation that could actually call for calling off of the talks again. So certainly I think there is certainly going to be, this understanding is already there with the Pakistani side. And,
what is the understanding?
I hope they will not do anything that can derail these talks.
You're not...
No, the Indian position has been stated upfront. I think last August...
Okay, the same...
separatist India's position last August is well stated, and that position does not need any reiteration in my opinion.
Oh, in your opinion, but the question which Mr. Katju has in his mind, it doesn't, you don't have an answer to that. Obviously, you're saying that, you're not aware of it. But let me get Mr. Naeem Akhtar in on this. Mr. Naeem Akhtar, some people are asking, Mr. Katju is a little bewildered that why we are bringing in the Jammu and Kashmir factor into this. But there are already people talking about how the state of affairs in Jammu and Kashmir, not having a government for the last 2 months, and the continuous talks which are going on between your party and the BJP to form a government there, and the kind of conditions which have been laid down by your party, all these seems to be coming in this context. So you think that this offer of India to Pakistan to renew the talks has anything to do with the demands which you people have made?
I did not listen, Girish, to most of what has been said by Mr. Katju, but we have already welcomed this as a very positive step.
Yes.
A gigantic step, we called it.
Right.
Because we have the advantage of disadvantage of living in Jammu and Kashmir, which Mr. Katju and others don't have. And we have been suffering this trouble. Whenever there is a bullet fired across the LOC or across the line of control or this border, it is a person from Jammu and Kashmir which gets who gets displaced, who gets affected. So that's why these voices of peace have come from the mainstream politicians who have come with people's support. So that is why Jammu and Kashmir should get into it. I am not privy to what has happened and how Mr. Modi has gone out on another initiative to follow up his May initiative when he invited Mr. Nawaz Sharif. But it's a welcome step. So far as the apprehensions expressed on your panel about what would have motivated and what conditions, I think there has been a lot of back-channel effort on this. And I think many things would have been cleared before this initiative has been taken.
But you're still not telling us what are the conditions which your party is laying down for the to the BJP to form some kind of alliance government.
They are focus areas of PDP, of Mufti Mohammed Said, who is a statesman who has been India's home minister, who understands this well. He is just adding to the national discourse on Jammu and Kashmir. These are the issues. If you address them, we would perhaps get this problem out of the way.
Okay.
That is our position.
Okay,
there
okay,
are
please.
Conditions, but we say that if you want to make a change in Jammu and Kashmir, there have been 12 governments in Jammu and Kashmir so far, but none of them has been able to effect the change that we promised them with every election.
Okay, please stay on, Mr. Akhtar. I'll come back to you. Pushp, do you think that there is a relation between the offer of the Indian government to Pakistan and the talks which are happening in Jammu and Kashmir between the PDP and the BJP?
If something has happened behind the scene, I am not privy to that. But I think Foreign Secretary going there is a very positive development, though it is part of, to me it appears, that it is part of the overall SARC initiative. But once the Foreign Secretary goes there, then I think we must assume that he does groundwork for the formal resumption of the Foreign Secretary level talks between the two countries. And Girish, I must tell you, there is something ironical about the entire thing. Only early this month, Pakistan government and Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif personally has pledged what they have been saying often, moral, diplomatic, political support to the freedom fighters, what they call freedom fighters and the separatists in Jammu and Kashmir. Only this month, on February 5th of February, they did it. So I think, I feel that India and Pakistan must engage in a more forthright discussion than merely part of the overall SARC initiative. And I hope that Foreign Secretary's visit yields something positive in this regard. So despite all the failures, despite all the...
That's fine. But
what we call backstabbings...
But you're not sure or clear that this initiative has anything to do with the talks which are going on in Kashmir, in Jammu and Kashmir, about the formation of a government there?
No, I don't think
you don't think
I don't think, because every political leader talks in that sense. Only thing is that during that period, Mufti Said was the Chief Minister and Atalji was the Prime Minister. We had very good relationship with Pakistan as it happened, and Mufti took the lead in normalization of relations. With the result that lakhs of people on the border lived comfortably for at least 3-4 years. I mean, after this accord between Musharraf and Vajpayee became effective.
Okay, I mean,
and it's a big thing. What Naeem Saab says is really, it does concern the people of any border area. In this case, Jammu and Kashmir.
Absolutely. Yes, Mr. Katju, you wanted to talk, you wanted to intervene when Mr.
I think
Akhtar was...
there is any Indian who is sane would want peace between India and Pakistan. Who doesn't?
Absolutely.
Would want the border and the LC to be peaceful. Would not want people living in that, Indians living in that area to suffer. But if Mr. Akhtar's argument is extended to its logical conclusion, then Indian foreign policy, instead of being made in Delhi, with respect to Pakistan, should be made in Srinagar, in Chandigarh, because there's Punjab, in Jaipur, and in Gandhinagar. It should not be made here. The very basis of our foreign policy in our constitutional mandate is that foreign policy is the preserve of the union, central government.
But this Prime Minister has gone on record saying that states should be involved in foreign policy also.
The involvement of states doesn't mean preconditions exercised by states. Consultation with all stakeholders in India is of course right.
I don't think...
But if there is a precondition imposed, then that is not acceptable. After all,
So you are saying
can we allow Chennai to have a veto over India's Sri Lanka policy?
it has had several times.
But that is wrong. It should not have. So,
No, I think Naeem Akhtar has made it very clear that it is not one of the preconditions. He has said it in as many words.
It is not one of the preconditions, okay,
And,
but...
yes, it is the feeling. It is the feeling of majority of leaders, not only PDP. You talk to any NC leader, you talk to any, know that BJP is trying to extend its base beyond one region of the state. So you will soon find that they will also talk of peace. In any case, BJP has to be more concerned about the welfare of the people of the border areas, because the party has gained sizable influence in those areas.
Absolutely.
And it is no directly contact with the people.
Yes, so...
no, I think that...
Jammu and Kashmir so far has been a bone of contention between the two countries. I mean, whatever
And
we may
you
say,
can't
and,
leave the people of Jammu and Kashmir and their feelings aside, and then is that what you're trying to say?
Yes,
okay.
Yes. No, for that matter, any state of the country. In this case, it is, as I said earlier, it happens to be Jammu and Kashmir.
Well, we've had dialogue with Pakistan off and on ever since independence.
Absolutely.
The point is, has the Pakistani attitude changed? The point is, how will we go ahead in changing the stereotyped image that Pakistan has of India?
Okay.
No, please, one second. I've dealt with Pakistan for over 20 years in my professional life. Now, my conviction is that unless we take steps, and these are hard steps, these are not easy steps, to change Pakistan's approaches to India, to change the stereotyped image, we will time and again go in this fashion. Mr. Modi had taken a good decision. Again, let me reiterate. If assurances, whether on the back channel or otherwise, have been received, I welcome this move. But if they have not been received, then I'm afraid I don't see any change.
You don't see any change, and you don't see why. So no, if you say that you don't see any change, because if there is no such assurances, then you don't see a reason why the talks should be renewed.
Well, great countries, when they impose when they draw a red line, they adhere to that red line. That is what I mean. That is the essence of diplomacy.
Okay, Mr. Ziauddin. Mr. Ziauddin, would you agree that things need to change? The Indian government has been, as Mr. Katju says, that when the talks were cancelled abruptly in August, it was very clear on why the Indian government was cancelling those talks. What was it that it was expecting from Pakistan before the talks could be renewed? Now, as Mr. Katju says that if this kind of an assurance has not been given in back channel or however, there is no reason why the talk should be resumed. That is what he says. What do you think?
Well, after listening to Mr. Katju and Mr. Naeem Akhtar,
yes,
my opinion about Kashmir and the issue itself has been reinforced. Personally, I think it is not Pakistan's position, but my personal position that Kashmir is India's problem because whether you call it a separatist movement or whether others call it a freedom movement is going on there. And it is up to India to handle that. And I have been advising government of Pakistan to, as far as moral support is concerned, we can keep on giving, but not to interfere, not to go inside and not to send non-state actors inside the Kashmir, Indian Kashmir, to create a problem where internationally we are maligned. Then, so my position is, it is India's problem. India has to resolve its problem with the Kashmiris. If the Kashmiris want freedom, well, I cannot help it. Pakistan cannot help it. Pakistan cannot help India in that manner. As far as Mr. Katju's position is concerned about Pakistan, not Pakistani in government officials not meeting the Hurriyat leaders before the foreign secretary's meeting, I would again reiterate that it was Mr. Modi who said that it is in the context of SARC that the foreign secretary is coming to Pakistan. In that context, we will not be meeting the Hurriyat. We have never met the Hurriyat when a SARC summit is going on. We have, whenever a Pakistani head of state or head of government went to India, he has always met Hurriyat. But when Mr. Nawaz Sharif went there as a goodwill gesture, he did not meet the Hurriyat. This should have given a signal to Mr. Modi and the BJP government that Pakistan can at times do things for the goodwill, for creating goodwill, which perhaps traditionally it had always been doing, which annoys India. When Mr. Nawaz Sharif went to India, he did not meet Hurriyat. That should have been the major, point which should have been considered by Mr. Modi when he cancelled the Foreign Secretary's meeting just because Mr. Basit, Mr. High Commissioner, met the Hurriyat.
Okay. Yes, you want to intervene?
A very simple question for Mr. Ziauddin. He has advocated that Pakistan should not send non-state actors into Jammu and Kashmir or elsewhere in India. Does he hope that the Pakistani army, which after all decides Pakistan's India policy, will adhere to this advice?
His advice. He has, Mr. Ziauddin.
There are two. I can give you two evidence of that.
Yes.
You can read Mr. Akhtar Patel's article after article, in which he has been saying, he's an Indian columnist. He has been saying that the infiltration has been reduced to zero, and he's quoted the Indian officials. And another evidence is, this time the turnout in elections, Indian Kashmir elections, the turnout was heaviest, was perhaps more than 70%. So that itself gives you this indication that there has been no interference.
Okay.
There has been no infiltration.
No, but that is what you say. But if you see the Indian press, even the other day, yesterday, I think there were cross-border firings which were happening there. Mr. Naeem Akhtar, coming back to you, you think that in the context of what my panelists have been talking about, the kind of conditions which have to be there before talks has to be renewed, Mr. Katju's consistent concern that if there is no assurance from the other side about certain issues which he has raised about Hurriyat and things like that, there can't be talks. You think that these preconditions have to be laid down by the government of India before proceeding with renewal of talks and these exploratory talks which the Foreign Secretary is supposed to start in next month?
Does Mr. Katju believe that Mr. Modi would have taken these initiatives in absence of such assurances? I don't believe so. And while this has been said that one of the reasons perhaps it has been suggested that could be perhaps the dialogue going on between PDP and BJP on government formation, I would not like to claim credit for that, even if it is so, which I don't know. But the fact is that the voices of peace from the elected representatives of Jammu and Kashmir can no more be ignored. Whether you try to compare this with Tamil Nadu and Bengal, where incidentally the state governments have actually determined and dictated foreign policy for the past 10 years at least. But we don't intend doing that anything. But the voices of peace from Jammu and Kashmir are more important because this is a state that has defied the logic of partition, and in spite of being a Muslim majority state, it has gone with a secular and a progressive country. And in spite of having done that, it has been suffering generation after generation.
Okay, sir. Narasimha, do you know Mr. Naeem Akhtar's point that the feelings of the people of Jammu and Kashmir has to be taken into account when any such talks take place? Is your party and the government compliant? Agree to what Mr. Akhtar says?
I think I would only say that it is the interest of the people of India, which includes people of Jammu and Kashmir, that will be paramount in ensuring determining our relations with all our neighbors. It cannot be the interests of only a people of a particular state, be it Tamil Nadu, West Bengal, or Jammu and Kashmir. I think the views of the people of these states would also be factored into account while determining a policy, but it is the larger national interest that alone should and will govern our relations, our engagement with all our neighbors, be it Pakistan, Bangladesh, or Sri Lanka.
Pushp.
I will like to point out a couple of developments. In 1964, Nehru sent Sheikh Abdullah there, along with a delegation of Kashmiri leaders from Jammu and Kashmir, to hold
Pakistan.
talks with President Ayub Khan. And after all, there is a part of Kashmir on the other side also, and the leaders there. Unfortunately, the delegation had to cut short its visit and come back because Nehru passed away.
Right.
In 2000, Vajpayee government allowed Abdul Ghani Lone to go there to solemnize the wedding of Sazal Lone, who is now a legislator in Jammu and Kashmir and a supporter of BJP, though his party is a live people's conference. And since I was part of that wedding as a member of the wedding party, I can tell you the entire exercise turned out to be a peace mission. Vijay Nambiar, who was the ambassador then, attended a lunch hosted by Lone. And he met everybody there.
So what is the point?
And the point I am making is that in this case, particularly at this juncture, when the tension is high on the LOC, it has been quite high of late. And
You don't agree with Mr. Ziauddin that the infiltration has stopped and there has been almost zero infiltration?
Can take place anytime where non-state actors are there. Pakistan has adopted a national action plan in the wake of Peshawar massacre of children. One of the 20 points of that action plan is zero tolerance against Punjab-based militancy.
Right.
That is Pakistan Punjab-based militancy. So we have to watch seriously on that. Militancy as Katju, and he is laughing, and I can understand why. Because the trouble starts from there.
The Lashkar-e-Toiba chief is roaming around freely.
He is roaming around freely. But at the same time, and since Katju has been there, he will notice there is a lot of concern in Pakistani media that not enough is being done to address India's concerns in this regard, about the Mumbai blast, about this.
No, but coming back to your earlier point, you said about Sheikh Abdullah.
Even Hurriyat leaders were allowed to go to
So
Islamabad.
you think, the point, one second, sir, 1 second. Let me get clarity. So you're trying to say that involvement of the state level leaders is very important?
I don't think there should be tripartite talking. But what I am pointing out is that Jammu and Kashmir has always been a part of...
and should be a part of the talks process also.
It will be both the countries have said.
Let me clarify that visit of 2000. Since I was
Sir,
there...
we are running out of time.
I was there. It'll take me 1 second.
Yes.
The Hurriyat leadership was allowed to go there, Mr. Lone, to solemnize a marriage. That was a deliberate decision, and he went there for social purposes, not to act as an interlocutor. Second, he invited Mr. Nambiar, the Indian High Commissioner. Our position is that the Lones are Indian citizens. If a prominent Indian citizen invites the Indian High Commissioner, the Indian High Commissioner goes for a social occasion.
No,
I have no problems. I have no problems if during social occasions there is
I don't think I have cast any reflection on Mr. Vijay Nambiar.
During social occasions, there are track too.
Informal discussion.
But there were a dozen functions at which people of all hues were present in Islamabad.
They all come. I have no problem.
We are digressing.
My thing is,
we are digressing.
There should be no perception that the Hurriyat, like Pakistan gives, that the Hurriyat is part of this dialogue process.
You will not accept. Very quickly, sir, both Mr. Ziauddin, very quickly, without, if the Hurriyat leaders have to be kept out of this process, would you agree with that? I think we have lost him. Mr. Akhtar, would you agree with that? I think we lost both of them. Anyway, Narasimha Rao, is that the position of the government as well as the party, that the Hurriyat leaders will have nothing to do with the talks either before or after, as far as the Pakistan government is concerned?
I think the government stand from the last August episode is quite evident. But exactly to spell out in complete detail is difficult for me.
Okay.
But on the government certainly objected to Pakistan talking to separatist leaders in New Delhi before the talks between the
Okay.
Beyond that, I think I cannot exceed my brief and elaborate on this.
Okay. I think on that note we need to end but we will wait and watch. There are certain concerns which has been expressed in this panel also. But everybody agrees that the renewal of the talks is something which is welcome. We'll wait and watch how it will all go about. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another big picture same time tomorrow.